And this morning we're continuing our series, Choose Life. And we're talking about choose life, not worry. Choose life, not worry. Anybody here ever worry? Every worry? Every step night worrying about tomorrow? Worried about all the things you have to get done tomorrow? All the things you need to do? All the things you are worried might happen to you tomorrow? Worry about your children, their futures, your grandchildren, your health. Worry about your health, your finances. You ever worry too much? You ever worry because you feel like you're worrying too much? You worry about worrying, huh? I want you to share, my mom was like that. I want you to know, so my mom was a wonderful woman, a great wife, a wonderful mom. But boy, she could worry. If there's something that could be worried about, Mom knew what that was, and she would worry about it. And I had an awful hard time having my mother ride with me because the whole time she would be worried about my driving. You ever have someone ride with you that the whole time they were riding with you, their hands were planted on the dashboard there beside you? I mean, and I'm not exaggerating. I'm not exaggerating. I pull up to a stoplight, Mom's hands to the dashboard, bracing herself for the stoplight. Pull up to a stop sign, hands on the dashboard, bracing for the stop sign. Accelerating out of a stoplight, hands on the dashboard, ready in case something were to happen. And the whole time looking all around here for that person who may run into us, and she's ready with her hands to go to I think her fingerprints were forever embedded in the dashboard of my car. But I loved Mom. But she worried. And I have to confess to you, I wish I could say I've never worried, but I worry as well. There have been times in my life I was so worried, I'd lay there in bed, and I don't know if you've ever done this, and I'd look at the alarm, the clock, and it's like 11 p.m. Oh, okay. 12 a.m. Oh, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 5 a.m. The whole time losing my mind, going crazy because I can't get to sleep because I'm so consumed in worry. Literally worrying myself sick. You know, worry can do that to you. Worry can make you sick. It can cause disrupted sleep, headaches, difficulty, concentration issues, nausea, muscle tension, exhaustion, irritability, elevated levels of the stress hormone cortisol, and can even lead to a heart attack. And we know this, don't we? We really know this, and yet we continue to worry anyway. But the strange reality of worry that it only exists in our minds. Worry, there's only one place worry exists, and it's within our minds. You see, to worry means to think about problems that might happen in our futures, and we think about them in a negative way, which causes apprehension and anxiety. Now, did you hear what I said? Worry is the things that we think about. We think. It's in our minds. And what worry is nothing more than our attempts to manage or to control, reduce the uncertainty of the future. Now, let us understand something. You know, all of us can look to the future, and a little bit of worry is good for us, really. You know, because we see something coming up. It's an issue, a situation, a relationship, something we need to address, and we worry and we react to it to try to reduce the uncertainty of it, to try to do what we can to be proactive. And that's good. It helps us to function in life. But when worry becomes such a part of us that our thoughts, concerns about the future, build up on one another and more in a negative fashion over and over and over again, it sort of results in a changed reaction that can become destructive and suck the life out of us. And Jesus says to us, but to choose life and not worry. And in our passage this morning, we're going to find Jesus has just finished talking to the religious leaders who were very affluent and had a lot of possessions, and so they really didn't think they had any need to worry. But then he turns his attention to the crowds. Everyone else that was listening, those who had almost nothing, no possessions, who had every reason to worry all the time. And he says, to address this issue of worrying, he says you can help it by thinking about creation. He gives them a picture of creation. Luke chapter 12, verse 22. Luke 12, 22. Then Jesus says to his disciples, therefore, I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or care about your body, what you will wear. Life is more than food, and the body more than clothes. Consider the ravens. They do not sow or reap. They have no storeroom or barn, yet God feeds them. And how much more valuable you are than birds. And who of you by worrying can add a single hour to his life? Since you cannot do this very little thing, why do you worry about the rest of life? Consider how the lilies grow. They do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you, not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. And if that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, how much more will he clothe you, O little faith? All right, on the surface, this sounds very appealing. It sounds really good, doesn't it? He says, consider the ravens. And the fact that he considers us to be more valuable than ravens. Well, God feeds the ravens, right? He feeds the ravens, and he ensures they are well fed. Then why wouldn't believe that he will always make sure we are well fed and taken care of? Or the lilies of the field. God clothes them in beauty because God loves us far more than the lilies of the field, and he takes care of the lilies and ensures they are clothed in beauty. Why would he not also be willing to and able to take care of us? Now, on the surface, this sounds really good. But I want you to know that when I read this passage, I always have trouble with it. I struggle with it. When I see the reality of the way the world is all around us. You're sure, God feeds the ravens. He takes care of the ravens, but not all the ravens are always fed. You know, there are times when there was famine in the land, and I'm sure none of the ravens were fed. And there are probably other times when the stronger ravens were fed, but the weaker ravens could not have food, and they died of starvation. And I believe that in the crowd that was listening to Jesus that day, there were men and women who had seen ravens who had starved to death. And sure, God clothes the lilies of the fields when it rains. And what Luke is talking about here is those anemones that on the hillsides of the area there in the Middle East, that they lay dormant within the ground until the very seldom rain shower would come and water the ground, and they would all of a sudden spring to life, and it'd be a scarlet blanket all across the hillside. Just a beautiful sight to see. But there were seasons that it didn't rain. There were times of drought when rain never came. And the anemones, they would not receive the rain, and therefore they would not spring forth from the ground, and then God could not clothe them in their beauty. And there are Christians who believe, and I believe, that God takes care of them and will always feed them. But eventually died of starvation. And other Christians who believe that God would take care of them, whatever the situation that they might come up against, and they were fed to the lions, and others died of COVID. And so we have these two comparisons of the ravens and the lilies of the field, that he cares for the ravens, and just like that he cares for us and the lilies of the field. But we're trying to piece it all together. And right between these two physical comparisons of creation, he asked them a question. He says, and who of you by worrying can add a single hour to his life? And since you cannot do this very little thing, why do you worry about the rest? You see, the ravens do not sow or reap. They have no storerooms or barns. They don't have the physical ability to raise food, to have crops, or to build a barn to store the food that they would raise. All they can do is eat what God gives them when God gives it to them. And to spring to life, the lilies always needed rain, but they could not create the rain. They cannot make it rain. They had to wait for the rain to come. So they would wait buried in the ground and be thankful for whatever rains God would send their way so that they could then spring to life. You see, unlike human beings, the lilies of the field and ravens do not have the ability to control their future. Remember, worry is nothing more than our human attempts to manage or reduce the uncertainty in our lives, in our futures. And since both the ravens and lilies do not have the ability to control their futures or to reduce or manage what their futures will look like, it doesn't make sense for them to worry. It wouldn't make any difference anyhow. And so they don't worry. But we are really not that much different than ravens and lilies, are we? Just like the ravens who can't grow the food, or the lilies who can't make it rain, we do not have the ability to add 1 second to our lives. Not 1 hour, not 1 minute, not 1 second. And since we don't have the ability to control this little thing in our lives, why do we spend so much effort and energy worrying about all the other things that we can't control either? It just doesn't make sense to worry when it's more easier to just simply trust God. And that's exactly what Jesus tells us to do. To choose life and not worry by thinking about creation, but also by seeking after the Creator. Verse 29. And he says, and do not set your heart on what you will eat or drink. Do not worry about it. For the pagan world runs after all such things, and your Father knows that you need them. But seek his kingdom, and these things will be given to you as well. Do not set your heart on, do not focus on, do not let the totality of your existence in your life always be on the things of this world. Do not always be thinking about what you will eat, what you will drink, what you will wear, what you will do next, what the next day holds. Because the more you think about it, the more you will worry about what you're thinking. See, Jesus says there's a choice to be made here. We can seek after things of creation. We can do that. What we'll eat, what we'll drink, what we'll wear. We can choose to chase after the physical things of this world. which is what the world chases after, or we can choose to chase after our Creator, who knows that we need all these things to live, but also knows we need much more than these things to live. Because life is more than food. It is more than clothes. It is more than what we experience each and every day. And the Creator of life wants to bring us life so that we can receive His life in us, receive the life of Jesus in us, and if we do, all these other things will take care of themselves. Because to choose life and to not worry is to do our best and to trust God with the rest, right? Just do our best and trust God with the rest. Ravens can only do what ravens can do. Ravens can't plant seed, they can't raise crop, they can only trust God to feed them. And the lilies, they can only do what lilies can do. They can't create rain for them to grow, they can only trust God to bring them the rain that they need. And we can only do what we can do and then trust God to bring us life. When I was younger, and lived it back at home, and my dad could sense I had something on my mind that I was worried about, whether a big test or a big basketball game coming up, and I couldn't sleep. He would come in my bedroom, and one of the things, Mom and Dad, they would always try to come in and spend some time in the evening talking to us before we went to sleep. But as he sensed my anxiousness and anxiety, my worry, he'd always say, hey, Scott, are you doing your best? Are you doing your best? And I would always reply, yes, Dad, I am. And he would say, that's good enough. Now get some sleep. I want you to hear this. If you're doing your best to obey God, if you're doing your best to follow God, if you're doing your best to love God, He says to you, that's good enough. That's good enough. Now get some sleep. But to choose life and not worry, we have to choose the God of life. But maybe you haven't chosen God yet. But you want to. Deep down inside, you know you want to. You know you need to. You know He's calling to. He's drawing you to Himself. Choose the God of life by choosing to follow His Son who came to bring us life. By saying, Jesus, I give you my life. Jesus, I give you my life. And begin to follow Jesus and live. Or maybe you're already a Jesus follower, but you worry. And you worry. And in fact, your worrying so much is impacting your following. It's impacting who you are. And you trust God, but not enough. And not the way you should, not the way as much as you should. And your prayer before, I think our prayer before God would be, dear God, help me trust you more. Help me love you more. And worry less. Dear God, help me to worry less so that I can live and follow you. Dear God, you've given us this human ability, this human power to choose. And we're talking about that. Each and every week we're talking about our ability to choose. To choose life. To choose you. And today's to choose life and not worry. But dear God, and worrying is so much a part of it. It's to be human. It's to be human. But even in our humanness, we can choose you. We can trust you more, love you more, follow you more. And if we're doing our best, you say to us, that's good enough. That's good enough. Dear God, thank you. Thank you for your life in us.